Hello, everybody. This is John. It's good to see you here. Thank you for coming. So, I'm going to talk today about the relationship between our work and the ancient spiritual practice of self inquiry. And I just want to say that I'm going to have to speak a little bit about religion and the role that religion played in the development of self-inquiry starting from the beginning. And I just want to make, to be sure that you understand that I have nothing against religion. In fact, I think that religion makes, religion is pretty much the only way to reflect upon the huge mystery of existence itself. The more we learn about the nature of the universe that we find ourselves in, and the more we learn about all of that, the more mysterious it becomes, and the more the approach that creates religion seems to make sense. There's very little that we can say about. We can figure out how things work, and we can see the nature of things, but the origin of them and the presence of us here is pretty much inexplicable, and that's the role of religion. Nothing against religion. But we don't use religion to fix our cars. And likewise, the idea that the problem of being a human being has as its origin and its solution a religious component to it is, to me, equally a misuse of religion in our lives and in our world. But it was within a religious context that this extremely powerful insight that came to be known as self-inquiry arose. And it arose within that context because, so far as I can understand, because the difficulty of being human, the strangeness of being human, the persistence of misery, mental misery, the misery of the mind, seemed to be something that came to us without us having anything to say about it, and therefore seemed to be within the natural purview of the religious view of things. So that self-inquiry, when it was discovered, and it was discovered like 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, when we didn't know anything about anything, when everything was wrapped in mystery. It appeared within that context of a religious understanding of the nature of the world, the nature of ourselves, and the nature of our misery. And the concepts of sin and retribution and salvation all arise because of the incomprehensibility, really, if you think about it, the incomprehensibility that we should be born, and then as we grow older and get more sense of what's going on, become more and more miserable, more and more confused, more and more afflicted by fears and stupidities, our own and others. This act of looking not only does not require a spiritual approach, the idea that it's spiritual actually makes it much more difficult to do. The idea that there's something religious about it makes it much more difficult to do. So it's a strange thing. It is my deep and absolute conviction that self-inquiry was the single most powerful insight that has ever come from the spiritual approach to trying to do something about human suffering, and that it was crippled because of the context in which it appeared. It was crippled by the requirement, the unstated requirement, that what was happening here, all of my misery and all of my happiness had a spiritual source to them. And when that goes away, everything becomes a lot easier. And the results, the final result, becomes much more conducive to a true, clear relationship with the wildness of being alive as a human being. As we begin to see how little we can do about how the life unfolds, we also begin to learn that there are things that we can do that are far more effective than we ever imagined things could be in helping ourselves with our own lives and helping ourselves understand and navigate our own lives in self-reliance and sanity. Self-inquiry is the most powerful thing that has ever come out of the spiritual adventure, as far as bringing the possibility of relief from the apparent misery of being alive as a human being. And that self-inquiry, because of the context of its origin, was for centuries kind of crippled by the assumption that what was happening here was spiritual, had a religious overtone to it. The truth is that there's no more religious overtone to looking at yourself, and there's no more religious overtone to what can be done to free yourself of the misery that is the lot of most human beings, trying to understand why things are as they are, why they do what they do, why other people do what they do to them. This looking at yourself is the human essence of self-inquiry. It is this distilled human essence of what self-inquiry, of what's possible by abandoning the idea that there's a spiritual component to this, at least for the time of trying to make yourself well, of abandoning the idea that there's a spiritual component to it. Just like I abandon the idea that the things that go wrong with my body have a spiritual component to them. Just as I abandon the idea that the 7-year drought here in California has a spiritual component to it. Just as I abandon the idea that that anything else other than the unspeakable mystery of existence has a spiritual component to it. Nothing whatsoever against spiritual activity. But human misery is not a spiritual matter. It really is that simple. Human misery is not a spiritual matter. We are human beings, born naturally in this world of mystery. We are human beings, born, most of us born with a sense that there's something wrong. We are human beings feeling trapped in a mind, because our mind is where we live our lives, really. We are trapped in the sense of being human beings, trapped in those minds, trapped in those things about which we have nothing to say. We have a great deal more to say about our minds and about our experience with life and about our relationship to life than can possibly be imagined within a spiritual context.